Welcome to the Snap UK podcast, your home for NFL news, views and opinions on this side of the pond. With me today, I have a less than full house of accomplices. John and Jim, say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
Sadly, Gilo's decided to abandon us at the last minute. I suspect his wife's had a say in that. And 4th Inches still working far too hard for a man of his advanced years. Anyway, 9 days from now, we will be tuning in to watch Trevor Lawrence feign delight at joining Jacksonville, Mel Kiper admonish some franchise for drafting a future Hall of Famer instead of a flaky receiver, and the Falcons draft Kyle Pitts to reignite Matt Ryan in a run to the Super Bowl again. But before all that, news! Comeback Player of the Year Alex Smith has finally called it quits. He's opted out of joining Jacksonville as the tutor for supposed Trevor Lawrence. What do we think, guys? He's had 7 years as the greatest game manager in the business, and 12? When was he drafted? 2008, 2005.
2005 was first year.
Yeah, so he's had 10 years before that as a middling quarterback, but certainly the last 7 years, a legitimate playoff contender every year. And also one of the grimmest leg surgery recoveries we've ever seen. 17 surgeries, very near amputation, possibly fatality from the amount of infection in there. We should be in awe of Alex Smith, I feel.
I feel we're all relieved. I think that's the term we probably all term to this retirement. Relieved that he's no longer going to be playing. And that's not a negative thing. I remember, when he came back last year against the LA Rams, seeing him carry Aaron Donald on his back and wincing, hoping, praying that he was going to stay upright. And I think I remember that they showed a picture of his wife in that moment, and I can't imagine being a member of his family at that point. After seeing everything that he went through to get to that point, and then seeing Aaron Donald kind of charging towards him, I probably would have had to gone to change my trousers. Away from that, though, he obviously 49ers fan. I'm a big fan of his. He didn't have the best of starts in San Francisco. He went for about 3 different head coaches, 4 different offensive coordinators, and he never really lit the game alight until kind of Jim Harbaugh took over, and that was kind of his best season. Like his first season was just awful season, but I think every 49ers fan will remember him for that divisional round game against the Saints in 2011, and an absolutely incredible game. Like, it's one of those games I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly the mood I was in, what I did when he threw that final touchdown pass to Bernard Davis to win the game. That's what he'll remember. He'll be remembered fondly by the 49ers fans, and I think by the Chiefs and football team fans. You're right, middling quarterback. He never set the world alight. He was picked before Aaron Rodgers, and that's what he's always going to be remembered for. And he never lived up to that billing, really. But he was a solid quarterback, a reliable quarterback. You relied on him not to give the ball away. He'd get players playing to the best of their abilities. And, I'm happy he's gone out on his own terms and not, because of the injury.
I think I just have to totally agree. It's I think after the injury, to be able to come back and just have that it wasn't a huge spell. I mean, but just be able to have that 3 or 4 games where he looked, well, he probably would still be the best quarterback in Washington. It's a great. He's gone from a middling quarterback to the best story in the NFL. And but as well, he's also hugely instrumental in the development of Mahomes, the best quarterback in the game right now. So there's a lots to be said for Alex Smith.
Let's not forget he was also hugely developmental in the progress of Colin Kaepernick. Now, it's a name that's more or less banned from this podcast because we don't like to rehash old ground, but that's 2 really good young players that he has helped to transform into game winners, into league leaders, if you like.
Yeah.
Because he's not a selfish player. And that has really shone through. I am willing to bet that he rooted as hard as anyone for Taylor Heineke, last season in the playoffs. I'm sure he would have wanted more from his career, but at the same time, most players don't get this far. They certainly don't get a second stab at it when they've virtually had their leg amputated. I think 3 or 4 years from now, when he's announcing on TV or breaking down the draft or whatever he's doing, I think he's going to look back and be very proud of this career, because after the first 3 years, it could have definitely gone a different way.
Yeah.
He could have been out of the league after year 5. I think that first season he had is the worst debut season by a quarterback in the last 20 years in terms of like yards gained and passer rating. Like, it was terrible.
It's one
touchdown.
Sorry, 1 touchdown to 11 interceptions in that first year.
Yeah, see, most players don't come back from that.
Yeah, I will say he must have been a dream to coach, because there's no diva-ness about him. And you're right to point to, he was unlucky to get dropped for Kaepernick. He got a concussion, stepped out. Kaepernick came in and like lit the NFL alight that year. He did a great job in coaching Mahomes, and he had a visit with Jacksonville this year, and I'm sure Urban Meyer was looking at it going, right, we're going to bring in Trevor Lawrence. Who can we bring him up? Who can we bring in to back Trevor Lawrence up, but also coach him to help coach him to be an NFL quarterback? Unfortunately, that's not what Alex Smith wanted. He didn't. He's a competitor still. He wants to play, and I think he knew that if he'd go to Jacksonville, barring an injury to Trevor Lawrence, who hasn't got a history of injuries in the college game, he'd not get on the field. And I think, rightly so. He's like,
you've got to expect that he's been told there'd be no competition.
Yeah,
you will be riding the bench, and I think maybe that's not an insult too far, but a pushback too far for a man who's just displayed the season he has, coming back from all these surgeries and the setbacks. So I think fair play to him for saying, okay, if you don't think I'm good enough to start anymore, I don't want to ride the bench. I've made my money. I don't need to do it. It almost feels like if somebody needed a quarterback at the last minute, they'll be ringing him and saying, are you sure we can't bring you back for one more go? But,
Josh McCown said no. Can you...
Yeah. I'm sort of delighted, as you guys have expressed, that he made it through last season. He made it through the Aaron Donald hit. And I think he'll be remembered very warmly. I'll leave this section with a couple of his NFL records, for instance. Most passes to start a season without throwing an interception. Anybody know how many? This was from 2017.
No.
120.
How many, sorry?
120.
Oh, no, you're way off.
Okay.
350.
Closer. 287 consecutive passing attempts without an interception. That's impressive. 49ers records. Fewest interceptions in a single season. 2011. He started every game. How many do you think?
5.
Yes, 5.
I've got it open in front of me, to be fair.
Well, there you go. You've opened it up. You beat me to it. But impressive. And then I quite liked the one I wasn't expecting. Chiefs franchise records. What's top of that? Anybody?
Completion percentage?
No. Most rushing yards by a quarterback in a season. 2015. 498 rushing yards he had.
He was sneakily quick. Like that game against the Saints in 2011, he scored a running touchdown, and it wasn't like a Peyton Manning or Tom Brady on the 1 yard line. It was a good few yards. He had sneaky athleticism to him.
Yeah, he certainly did, and it helped as well that people would drop back a little bit and assume he was staying in the pocket to throw, and then he'd have room to go. So credit him where it's due. I'm sure some people will be listening to this saying you've spent 10 minutes discussing a guy who isn't going to the Hall of Fame, but he should be remembered for a long time. Anyway,
I think we get caught up on the Hall of Fame too much.
Of course.
But I will say I do have for him, for Smith, Breeze as well. Unfortunately, to finish this year, I feel bad for them because effectively they've finished without crowds.
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest unfair thing for Breeze is going to go down as a top 5 quarterback of our lifetime, Smith as the top story of our lifetime, and they've sort of effectively not gone out with a whimper. Because they haven't, but
your point's valid.
They feel. I feel like they deserve a standing crowd as they leave, and they just haven't got that, and it's so unfair.
Does anyone on here feel old now? We've watched the Manning brothers, Breeze, Rivers, and Smith all retire in the last few years. Because I do.
I mean, we can still watch Brady. So
yeah, we're left
with
Brady, Rodgers, Roethlisberger from this. Long-term class of excellent quarterbacks.
Yeah. But it does. It feels like
And
I get the feeling I might not be able to play professional sports when I see people my age retiring.
The thing is, though, if I ask you to pick who's next, I'm sure you're both going to say Roethlisberger because he's the one who looks closest to the end.
Yeah, definitely.
By closest to the end, you mean a thumb?
He does look like a thumb. Anyway, moving on from the comeback player of the year to comeback player. Has anyone seen Aldon Smith? I don't mean wreaking havoc in a backfield. I mean, literally, have you seen him lately? Because he's wanted for choking someone out in a coffee shop, which is not the most masculine of things to do. Here's the thing I found interesting about this. He stands to be hit with a legal penalty somewhere between a $2,000 fine and 8 years in prison. Now, those two things seem very far apart. I mean I'm not making light of it, but they do, right?
He's rarely been out the news for anything positive, hasn't he? I mean, other than positive drugs tests. You look at back to kind of 49 fandom. You look at Alex Smith, it's like, yeah, great guy. Played his heart out. Shame he's gone, but yeah, all right. And you look at Smith, and I hold my head in my hands, and he was such a talent, and what a waste.
Yeah.
His first 2 seasons in San Francisco, it was between him and JJ Watt as pass rusher of the. He was the level pegging. He was that sort of quality, and to say it went to shit is an understatement.
He still holds the NFL record for the most sacks in a player's first 2 seasons.
Yeah, I can believe it.
33.5 sacks.
He's also the
fastest player in league history to record 30 sacks, 27 games. This guy had everything in front of him, and his legal issues are just phenomenal. A lot of them have been violence or drug related, I believe. So the guy's clearly got some sort of issue. I like watching him play, but I don't necessarily feel it's something the league should be having around.
Yeah, I think if he didn't have the talent that he had, we wouldn't be hearing about him for the last 5 years. It's only the fact that he is such a talented player that he keeps getting the opportunities. And this latest opportunity with the Seattle Seahawks, I think that's now down the pan, and that's probably the last we'll see of him now.
Yeah, I mean, that's assuming he did this, but it seems like he did do this.
Yeah, unfortunately, you kind of think with his history, you'd be like, well, of course he did it. But maybe he didn't. Hopefully he didn't.
Let's hope so, but I guess when they start running for the border, generally isn't a good sign of innocence.
Yeah, most guilty people don't run away, do they? Most innocent people don't run away.
But yeah, I guess I'll take it to 6 years that he's missed of his career for now.
Do either of you wish to discuss further the Deshaun Watson case this week?
No.
Nope.
I'm going to say that. So no, that's fine. I know. You know what? It makes some very uncomfortable reading and some very uncomfortable points of discussion. But I think we will be leaving that until we have some certainty to base our further opinions on. Because it's so up in the air still that it's very difficult.
We'll leave that in the court's hands and let the lawyers battle that one out. Other than say he's not going anywhere. There's no team that's going to trade for him until this is sorted out. So
can't be done.
Enjoy Houston.
Yeah, enjoy watching him in your crowd when he can't play. But Tyrod Taylor, he's okay. Jadeveon Clowney signs a 1-year deal with the Browns and will play opposite Myles Garrett. Should we be excited or should we be fed up now of watching Clowney not produce?
I don't think we should be fed up.
No.
He gets a bad rap because he doesn't get sacks, but if you look at his stats when it comes to pressures on a quarterback, he does get there, just doesn't finish it off, but that's still important. give him another chance. He had a bad injury last year, which basically ruled him out of the season with the Titans. And if he can produce, it's the Browns aren't losing anything. Although I will say that they released Sheldon Richardson as part of this deal.
Yeah.
And he had a pretty good season last year. And defensive tackle isn't a strong group of players in the draft. So whether they're going to shift Jadeveon Clowney inside or not, I don't know.
It seemed like an odd move. I'd have rather had Richardson on my team.
Yeah, I think I would as well.
And I gather that Richardson very well liked in the locker room as well. So whilst the Browns have done some really good things in the last couple of years, this move slightly puzzles me. Feels like a big
Old
name
Browns.
gamble as opposed to a productive player gamble.
It feels like a return to the old Browns, as Julie said. That
a little bit. I really hope not. I really, really hope not. But it feels a little bit that way. Yeah, you're right. He doesn't rack up the sack statistics like you'd hope from a first rounder. We just discussed Aldon Smith, 27 games to get to 30 sacks. Jadeveon Clowney's been playing in the league since 2014. He only has 32 sacks in that time.
Did have a good few years in Houston where he was injured.
83 games he's played. So I don't know. I'm not fed up with seeing him because he is a good player and he is disruptive, but he's closer to being a bust than he is to being a star player for me for being picked number one.
I think he's a solid starter. I'll go as far as that.
To be fair to him, he's been for the last 2 years. He's been on Seattle's defensive line that no one gets any sacks.
Yeah,
and he's been at Tennessee, and defense wasn't particularly good last year. So,
this is as good a chance as you're going to get with Myles Garrett on the other side. So
it could be make or break for him. Really, I think
could well be.
I think
how
if he
how many Pro Bowls has he actually been to? Any? I'm not actually sure, if I'm honest. I didn't look that up before we came on, but anyway, if he can't do it with Myles Garrett, it's going to be a case of can't do it at all. This feels to me like
three Pro Bowls.
Yeah. More than I thought. This feels to me very much like, well, we know it's a prove it 1 year deal, but it feels like the last hurrah. If he doesn't get somewhere near double-digit sacks this season, I'm not sure people are going to be queuing up to give him the money he wants next year.
Not the money he wants. I think if it doesn't work and he wants to carry on and give it another try, he's pretty much going to have to take a minimum pay deal from someone. Because if it doesn't work this year, you're looking at 2-3 years of minimum production on the big stats columns. And that just means that teams can pick up other pass rushers. Like there's a good few in the draft this year. It's probably the third most important position on a team is having a good pass rush after quarterback and a left tackle. So there are premium positions, but you can fill the need. There are pass rushers knocking around, like Danielle Hunter's after a trade out of Minnesota at the moment. I'd take him over Jadeveon Clowney at the moment. Yeah,
agreed. I think what's he on his third team in 3 years? It just it doesn't feel like the start of something special. It feels like the end of something disappointing. That's what I'm saying, and I know a lot about disappointing endings, if I'm honest. Right. The great European Super League catastrophe. Now, it's not NFL per se, but it's based on the franchise system to a degree. So we decided it was something we should tackle quickly this evening. If you don't know what this is, it's 12 clubs in Europe decided 2 days ago that they were going to break away and form a football league where they couldn't be relegated. And it turns out this is not a popular concept amongst the fan bases or any of the pundits or basically anyone who isn't an owner of a football team.
I think YouGov did a poll and they polled supporters based on their favourability of this prospect, and I think 20% came back and said they were strongly in favour or partially in favour of the European Super League. So that kind of says you don't normally get polls that swing that wildly in one direction, and everyone I've spoken to is anti it. I will say by the time people come to listen to this, the whole thing could be over because Chelsea and Man City are now preparing to pull out of it. But to your point, it's very much kind of coming from American owners who, they want to make money, and they have a guaranteed level of money income. When owning a franchise in the US, be it NFL, NBA, NHL, and that's based on TV revenue, but it's based on not getting relegated from the league and playing at a lower level. So that's kind of where I feel it's come from. But it's fine for that in the US because that's how the sport has been organised and built from day one. Well, maybe not day one, but for a good long time, and it works. Soccer, football doesn't work like that. We have a pyramid system where the teams right at the bottom of the pyramid benefit from the money that comes in at the top. It all trickles down. It has an effect. And for these owners to come in and take that away it shows selfishness and ignorance to the game. You haven't understood the history of the game. You haven't understood the fan point of view, and also it's greed, quite frankly, and that's what it comes down to. It's I'm not. The
thing a lot of us like about soccer is it's not a closed shop.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's pros and cons to both systems: the open system that we have and the franchise systems from America. Yeah. I was saying to you guys before we started, really, these wealthy owners have got enough money to start a dozen football franchises and form their own little league and negotiate deals with players and operate inside or outside FIFA, whatever they want to do, but don't steal people's beloved clubs by ambush. That's not okay.
Yeah, and you got the great thing about the Premier League is that on any given Sunday, and this is true of the NFL, one of the big six on Sunday drew with Fulham. Arsenal drew with Fulham, and that was only because Arsenal scored in the 97th minute. You're not going to get that with this European Super League. You lose out on the excitement. Arsenal, Real Madrid versus Liverpool in the Champions League final is special because it's a special match and there's a rarity to it.
Yeah,
doing it every week, you take away that rarity and it just becomes a normal game. So you'll lose that glitz.
Yeah, as well as I said, they were really following the the NFL style system by they were going to impose a salary cap to basically. The only reason you have a salary cap is so the owners can make more money. And as well, because effectively, we've mentioned this because it involved the Glazers and Kroenke, who own the Buccaneers and the Rams, who are the quieter owners. If Jerry Jones owned Liverpool, then at least he'd be telling people about it. But it's just the fact that no one's talking about it, and it's just worth bringing up.
Saying that, I now really want to see Jerry Jones owning a Premier League club. I think that'd be hilarious.
God, yeah. I mean, as long as it's not my club,
Hey, he can take over my club, but we're not.
I was going to say,
but if he wants to run Luton Town, Jerry, we're all yours.
You are welcome to it if you're going to invest some money into us.
I mean, technically, the 49ers do own my club, so. As a Leeds fan, because they do own like a third of my club, so yeah, I still think you're shit, but I'm a self-hating Leeds fan.
Comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Some breaking news. Jordan Reed, long-time tight end for football team, has called it quits. He's seen a concussion expert, or as John likes to say, he probably saw two, even though there was only one in the room. And he's decided that it's the end of the road. And this is probably not too late, because whilst being an incredibly athletic and talented tight end, he has consistently failed to see seasons through, being very brittle, basically. And the concussions have been numerous. So a sad way to sign off, but in terms of personal health, the right move, I think. Guys?
Yeah. I mean, with when it comes to concussions, I don't think there is such a thing as playing it too safe, really, especially with the amount of concussions he's had. So, he's been here 8 years in the league, so that's probably what mean, I'm going to guess at least 8 bad concussions. Although this year he was on injured reserve because of an MCL injury, not because of concussions. But I'm assuming he sprained an MCL whilst recovering from a concussion. So
seems likely.
But yeah, it's a sad way to end because he was a talented player, but it's quite a common story really in the NFL, sadly.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. Really good player when he was fit. Playing with him in terms of kind of a fantasy football game, you'd always want to pick him up and then be left disappointed that he wasn't playing half the time.
Yeah.
But for him, you can't disagree with anyone when they do this because he has had a lot of concussions. It's his health, it's his brain, effectively. So you can't. I don't think no one should ever disagree when a player makes this call. You can be upset that you're not going to see him, but this is the rest of his life. He doesn't. We know too much about brain injuries and concussions for a player not to take it seriously.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on from that, we're going to break down the draft prospects at various positions, led by our de facto draft expert Jim. He just doesn't know it yet. To highlight the top 4 or 5 prospects at each position, those likely to go in the first couple of rounds. Maybe 1 or 2 that people are glossing over unfairly, or 1 or 2 that have been elevated unnecessarily. So it seems appropriate, because everybody does, to start with the quarterbacks. I don't want to have a discussion about Trevor Lawrence. We know he's going number 1 overall. We know he's in the Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck class of college-rated quarterbacks. The only thing I want to say is, don't assume this guy is going to be a success. The Jacksonville Jaguars are terrible. Their franchise record with quarterbacks is terrible. And if I were him, I wouldn't want to go there, because I think that's the best way you can sink a career, is by starting at a poor franchise. Look at Sam Darnold and the Jets. But like I say, we'll skip over Trevor Lawrence. We know that's already in stone.
The one thing I will say about Trevor Lawrence is, I think, at the weekend, there's a Sports Illustrated article that came out, and he said he doesn't play with a chip on his shoulder. He's not that type of. He doesn't glean motivation from that. And the amount of hoo-ha that's been around in the media about that, and I just think it's indicative of the fact that there's been no, I guess, real kind of critical analysis of him done by draft media over the last year, because since 2018, he's been the first pick of the 2021 draft.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So I mean,
people are desperate. What dirt can we find? How can we make this more interesting? You can't. They don't even need to run the clock on the first draft pick a week Thursday. They can just move straight to pick number 2 and go from there.
I think they could probably move straight from pick number 3. But yeah, I mean, he's a special player. Like, his stats are amazing. He looks like a quarterback. He acts like a quarterback. I agree. The Jags historically have been very bad, but it's a new Jacksonville. It's new coaching, new head office. It's a whole new team there. So,
John, can you just cut this bit out so we can play it back to Jim this time next season?
You'll notice I said hopefully. It's a good omen that they're going to build around a quality quarterback. This is the first time they've had such a good quarterback. I've told you before,
untried college coach takes over failing NFL franchise with brand new rookie quarterback. That is not a good concoction.
I'm predicting Trevor Lawrence has a great year 6 when he finally changes franchises.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Right. The other potential first-round quarterbacks, I'm looking at the list that Jim has kindly provided us. So Jim, like me, has Justin Fields as his second highest ranked quarterback. I don't really get the knock on this guy beyond the fact that he could do with a little more experience. I think of the other quarterbacks in this draft, his ceiling is highest, only behind Trevor Lawrence. So maybe he needs time to develop, but so did Patrick Mahomes. I don't really get the knock on Justin Fields. Jim, what do you think?
Don't get it myself. This guy is a competitor. He's got great arm talent. He is probably the best athlete of all the quarterbacks, and I put Trevor Lawrence in there as well. The guy is stacked. He is built like a brick shithouse. So good luck knocking him down. I feel the knock is slightly connected to his school in terms of Ohio State haven't had a good track record of sending quarterbacks to the NFL.
No.
Dwayne Haskins being the last example. But this guy's a winner. Like, he's played 2 years at Ohio State. That's quality competition. And when you look at the next quarterback down, who is likely to go to the Jets, it's as nailed on as Trevor Lawrence is to the Jags. Zach Wilson to the Jets is also nailed on. Zach Wilson started the season not guaranteed being the number one quarterback at BYU. He's had a great season, but the competition is a lot easier in his conference. So he looked great on his pro day. He's made some fantastic throws throughout the season. But I don't get... I'm sure you speak to a lot of media analysis or draft analysis. I don't get why Zach Wilson is so far ahead of Justin Fields. I also don't get why there's a question mark over Justin Fields going number 3 and Mac Jones being that pick. But that's...
Yeah, so
that's that.
To that point, Zach Wilson to the Jets does sound like the pick for number 2. I really like Zach Wilson. There's been knocks on his character. Rich kid, basically does what he wants to do. I suspect some coaches would be put off by his Russell Wilson-esque desire to just make the play, or Aaron Rodgers-esque just desire to ignore the play that comes in and do what he feels like. But he's also a kid. Apart from looking 12 years old, he is just a kid.
Yeah, it does look really young.
I've got a feeling Zach Wilson ends up somewhere in the Dak Prescott realms of being good enough and on his day being brilliant. Again, the franchise worries me. They've just ruined one class quarterback, and I'm not sure Zach Wilson is ready to lead a New York franchise. So seems an odd pick to me.
That's the other thing. He's going from a small town in Utah into New York. That would be a concern for me. But hey,
as a kid with ADHD. That's because that's what he had. He has ADHD, so
it's not ideal. The other two first round looking quarterbacks, you've got them ranked 4th and 5th in the quarterback standing. Trey Lance, this guy reminds me of Josh Allen, and you'll remember a few years back I said Josh Allen's going to be amazing, and everyone poo-pooed me, and it turns out I was right. I think Trey Lance has similar traits. It's just the arm is a cannon. And just like Josh Allen, there is absolutely no finesse. It's just catch this, wallop. And I really like that because I think you can coach the finesse in. He's got the arm that all quarterbacks want. And then Mac Jones, I don't get it. I can see why he's being associated with the Niners because Shanahan wants a player who'll just do what he's told. He wants a Kirk Cousins, which is probably the Mac Jones realm. But it's a lot to give up for a player who, by himself, won't elevate the team.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I don't get why you give up 3 first-round picks for Mac Jones. I think they could have stood at 12, and then on the day perhaps kind of moved up to 9 or 8 and get Mac Jones. So I don't get that. Trey Lance. My concern on Trey Lance is he's only got one season under his belt. Yeah. The competition for him at North Dakota State isn't great. He has got a cannon on his arm. I think he's got one of the highest ceilings. He could potentially have a higher ceiling than Justin Fields. He does look amazing. His one season he didn't throw an interception. So even playing against slightly worse competitions, when you look at that level of accuracy and that level of kind of game management and decision making, you've got to set like 287 pass attempts without an interception is impressive, no matter where you're playing and who you're playing. So that kind of appeals to me. He's got the running game that Josh Allen has as well. And he's another unit at quarterback. Mm-hmm.
Did either of you pick up on the fact that Mac Jones's real name is McCorkle?
I did, yeah. McCorkle Jones. No wonder it's shortened it's Mac. McCorkle.
I didn't know that.
I think his first name's Michael. Is it not Michael McCorkle-Jones? I think it is.
Look, Matt Jones is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
But he's
Do you
got
not think he gets
good around
criticised
because
he played at such a good franchise?
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean he's good. It just means he gets harshly criticised for playing at a good college team, sorry.
Again, he's accurate. He's, in terms of accuracy, it's second only to Trevor Lawrence. But over the last 2 years, he's had 4 round 1 wide receivers, an all-star offensive line, and decent running backs like Najee Harris played with him for last year. He's likely to go in the first round this year. So he's had a lot of talent around him. Still going to get the job done, which he has. He's won the national championship. So let's not knock him completely. And he seems like his teammates rate him over Tua Tagovailoa. But then realistically, Tua's in the league already. His teammates are trying to get Matt Jones at the best position they possibly can. So, look, if the 49ers draft him, I will be disappointed. I think they will draft him. And like I said last week, in Shanahan, we shall have to trust.
Yeah, if his ceiling is Tua, then it's a lot to give up. I think they'll both be fine, but it's a lot to give up.
The Draft Network compares him, like when you look at their player comparison, they compare him to Andy Dalton.
First round picks, you say? Oh,
Andy Dalton. Yeah.
Just because it's quarterbacks, do you want to look outside the top 5? Is there anybody that catches your eye in the rest of the quarterback field?
Davis Mills from Stanford. Intriguing. Hardly played any games last year, but had looked amazing. He could go in the second round. Carl Trask, Florida. Rumors, during the season he could creep into the first round. There's been rumors that New Orleans are a bit enamored with him, and they could look to either try and move up in the second round to get him, or even move into the end of the first round to try and pick him up and have that 5-year contract on him. But those are the 2 I'd look out for. I really like Sam Ehlinger at Texas.
I thought Sam Ehlinger was brilliant, but he has dropped like a stone. 2 years ago, people were saying, right, this guy's going to be in the first round. Now they're looking at like 4th or 5th round.
He's going to be early day 3 at very best. So I enjoyed watching him. He's a winner.
He looked like a winner to me. My pick is Kyle Trask. I watch the Florida Gators games. That's my college team. And I think, he's not Trevor Lawrence. He's not Justin Fields, and he's not Zach Wilson. But I actually think he's closer to Trey Lance and Mac Jones than he's being given credit for. I don't really understand why he's so far away. His game processing ability is just as good as theirs. His arm is good. He's mobile. Yeah. So I don't really understand why there's such a big disparity, if I'm honest.
His prospect comparison though is Nick Foles.
Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. Just saying. Anyway, moving on.
One time.
Running backs. Now, not that many years ago, you'd get a few running backs in the first round, but over the last 6 or 7 years, it's become a de facto odd position to pick in the first round because people have realised running backs break down very quickly. What do you think? How many even go in the first round? 2? 1?
1.
Yeah. Harris?
I think I think it's Harris. Just because he fits a couple of the schemes. He fits very well in Pittsburgh, and I think he fits very well in Buffalo as well, who can do with a physical runner. I really like Najee Harris. I rate Etienne slightly above him because I think Etienne's slightly more explosive. He improved in the pass game through the last season. He's a bit more of a home run hitter. Najee Harris is not Derrick Henry, but he's that kind of build. And apparently a lovely guy, a really good character, which means a lot. We can see what these players do on the field, but teams have to work with them day in, day out. So they want to look at their character, their character profile and see if they're good. I've never heard bad things about Najee Harris as a teammate or just as a person. He just seems like a decent guy.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I really like Javonte Williams. I think this guy looks like a beast. I'm not hearing any discussions about him, and I don't really get it. Like I've seen a few of his games, and I just think he looks more than capable of holding his own against an NFL backfield trying to run through. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes higher than some people are discussing, maybe a very early round 2.
Yeah.
Don't forget the Steelers are probably going to have to draft 2 running backs because they've got nothing. So they might not go too early, but they're going to go 1.
That's not true. They've got Benny Snell.
Like I said, they've got nothing. They just allowed James Conner to walk away to the Cardinals. They need 2 running backs in this draft.
Yeah. I assume when James Conner was walking away to the Cardinals, he got injured, though. So
yeah, and that's fair. But I don't know. I'm just saying, Big Ben is not, we've said earlier, he's not carrying this team anymore. It's not happening. You've got to put weapons around him. They will pick up, in my opinion, a running back in the first round. And then probably as early as round 4, they'll be back in for another one because it's not guaranteed that one works out. And they've got to have somebody.
I think if you could come back in either at the end of round 3 or early round 4 and Trey Sermon out of Ohio State sitting there, I think that's great value.
Yeah.
He effectively when Justin Fields was a little bit injured in that semi-final game against Clemson, he effectively got them there. Like he had a great game. And I think he could be a really good player, a really good starting running back. And I think that's the problem with running backs at the moment is they're a little bit hit and miss. Some of them. We haven't had like a Saquon Barkley or a Zeke Elliott for a while, who are guaranteed top 10. But like to your point, teams have realised they can get an Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round. They can get a David Johnson, in the 3rd round when he was good, obviously. You can get Trey Sherman or Chubba Hubbard out of Oklahoma. I just like that name.
Chubba Hubbard is a great name.
Yeah,
it definitely sounds like one somebody made up.
Exactly. There's value to have there. I think that's why they get pushed down. And it's between Harris and Etienne who goes in the 1st round, but it'll only be one of them, I think. Could be wrong.
Yeah, I just see running back just being sort of. I think we've had the peak of the running backs. I think people are remembering that people are still burnt about Fournette, Rashard Penny in the 1st round. These are running backs that haven't proved their worth. So I think it's harder unless it is someone like a Barkley McCaffrey. But these guys just aren't there yet. But
wide receivers for me, at least 3 this year will go in the 1st round. Waddle, Chase, and Smith, I think, are all 1st round picks. Was it last year or the year before? There were like 5 wide receivers in the 1st round. It was quite a lot last year.
Quite a lot last year.
Last year, yeah.
Again, it's a position for me where I think there's a lot of depth every year at wide receiver because the gap between the players ranked 5th to 15th at wide receiver is not that big. But this year, the top 3 or 4, certainly the top 3, are far superior to the rest of the wide receiver crop. Do you not agree?
Yep, completely agree. I'd be surprised if you see any of the top 3, Waddle, Chase, or Smith, probably gone by pick 14 or maybe 15 if the Pats decide to take another wide receiver. I think you'll probably see another couple go in the 1st round. But there is a drop off. You're absolutely right. But and we said this last year with CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy. And we said, there's a big drop off after that top 3. Look what Jefferson did at Vikings. So the draft is a crapshoot. Especially in round 1, you're going to get 50% of them right. So you're going to find Michael Thomas is a 2nd round wide receiver. So there is a lot of depth after that 3 who aren't as blue chip player, but between Rashad Bateman, Terrence Marshall, I really like Kadarius Toney, even all the way down to kind of Dwayne Eskridge, who could be 5'9". He's a little pocket rocket, but good in the return game. So there are other places where wide receivers are useful.
Yeah, Steelers as well can always pick up a whether it be a Chase Claypool last year. You know, that what they find in the later rounds generally is gold. So, you know, there is value there. But
your brother always likes to pick a random player in our draft.
Yeah.
What do you think about number 228 overall, Wop Filior? That sounds like one that your brother will be straight in for.
That's a great name, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay. One of the often underrated but very important parts of the draft are the linemen. So starting with the O-line, what do we think of the prospects this year? It's an okay class.
It's a good
Is
class.
it a deep class this year?
It is a deep class. I think you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe
5?
6 offensive linemen.
I'd say if you're
going in the first round.
Yeah, I've got 5. Yeah.
And I think there's depth further down as well into the early second round. I think the top 2, Penny Sewell and Rashawn Slater. I think they're the top 2. I think there's a drop off after that down to kind of Darrisaw and then Jenkins. But that's not to say Christian Darrisaw and Terran Jenkins aren't good players. I think they'll be fine players in the NFL. And I think that there's not as many kind of interior offensive linemen this year. Like Elijah Vera Tucker, I think is going to be good. Landon Dickerson out of Alabama. He's going to be another good player, but Alabama linemen usually are pretty decent. They're quite reliable. And then back to tackle. So I really like Liam
Eichenberg. I think Liam Eichenberg is going to be one of these day one starter.
Yeah, Notre Dame are another college team who churn out good offensive line players like Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey, two that spring to mind in recent years.
I'm always looking for the Patriots to draft at least one O-lineman, and he would be the one I would take at the positions we're going to be at.
I think you should always take at least 1 or 2 O-linemen through the draft. There should always be a couple because you always need depth there. I mean, you look at what happened to the Chiefs this year. Last year, sorry. I also really like Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. Again, another Alabama prospect. I can see him. He's going to move inside to the offensive guard, I think, when it comes to the next level.
Can I also mention Quinn Miners, Wisconsin Whitewater? Because that's just a fucking name.
It's an amazing name. And yes, you may mention him. I didn't realise we were rating people by name, but I like it. Onto the D-line now.
Hang on. You missed out an incredibly important position where probably one of the best players in the league is. You've missed out tight end.
Well, now I've left that to last because the only good tight end who's going to play and be good straight away is Kyle Pitts. So I was circling to him last. But if you want to do that while we're still on offense, that's fine.
What a tight end!
Kyle Pitts is going to make the Atlanta Falcons really competitive. They have to take him.
Yeah. Is he?
They have to take him.
Well, I still think they trade out of it.
The lowest he goes is 6. Is your phone disagreeing with you?
It is.
The lowest he goes is 6, and that's only if the Falcons take a quarterback or trade for a team that wants a quarterback, and the Bengals did a sensible thing and draft Penny Sewell. So he's like. I've ranked him as the third best player behind Trevor Lawrence and Penny Sewell because he is. He's an athletic freak. I think if you had him and Mike Gesicki at the Dolphins, imagine defending that.
I know people are very keen for the Falcons to search for Matt Ryan's successor or grab themselves a host full of late round picks and drop in the first round. Why? Matt Ryan is still more than capable. Julio Jones is still more than capable. Calvin Ridley is more than capable. Yeah. Add another weapon. Your team needs defense, but you can go offense in the first round with the best offensive non-quarterback player there is in the draft, and you've got him for 5 years. That's the end of Matt Ryan's run. Then you can move on.
That's a fair point. I could see, this is a bit crazy, really, really crazy scenario, which you could see happening, is Dallas trading up to take him, because apparently Jerry Jones loves carpets. And to be fair, pretty much every GM loves carpets, because he's just phenomenal. But yeah, Dallas might just be crazy enough to do it, but I don't think that'll happen. Just be funny if it did.
Yeah. Okay. So back to my linear draft here. On the D line, I mean, I don't think it's as good as the years gone by. I'm not sure this year that it's one of the. I don't know. I'd say out of the last 10 years, this is probably only year 8, maybe.
Yeah. I think let's start interior defensive line.
Go on then.
I think it's one of the worst years we've seen for a while. I think only Christian Barrymore is going to go in the first round based on what I've been reading, and I think even that's a stretch. Edge rush, which that's defensive end or outside linebacker. There are a few players here who are going to. I mean, 4 or 5 maybe in the first round, but it's not going to happen.
How many of them are?
There's no kind of blue
home
chip.
runs.
There's no Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Nick Bradley Chubb. There's nothing like that in this draft. Based on kind of what we're seeing.
He's a good player.
Russell,
I like what he's turned out at college.
Yeah. I think kind of in 2019, I think when he got to the end of the 2019 season, he would be the one that people were saying, right, he's going to be a top 5 player in the draft. He didn't have a great 2020, which is why his stock has dropped slightly. Jalen Phillips, another Miami player.
Yeah.
There are doubts about his fitness. He left UCLA because of concussion and fitness issues. He's had a good season at Miami. He's shown what he could be, and he could slot into pretty much any system, be it a 3-4 or 4-3 defensive system. So I have him in terms of kind of mock draft. I would say he's probably the first draft edge rusher that's going to go.
Right.
And Kwity Paye, I think, is going to be a good player, though. I really like him, but he's a bit more. He's a defensive end. Like you want him going into kind of a 4-3 defense. So Jalen Phillips, because of the versatility, he can go anywhere. Kwity Paye, I think, probably the better player overall.
What about and this is a flyer, but Ronnie Perkins? I have really enjoyed Ronnie Perkins watching him. You've got him ranked at your number 81 player overall. I think he might be a good day 2 pickup for somebody.
Yeah.
I think he's got all of the attributes to, by the end of his first season, be an extremely disruptive player. So I'm just not nailing my colours to the mast so much, more just surprised that he was so low down. I thought he was. I have thought he's better than that and would suit very well to the NFL. That's just my opinion. John, have you identified any names in there that you'd like to be picked just because the names are good?
Adetokunbo Ogundeji.
Yep, that's him. Number 119. That's who I was looking at. So,
although I also quite like Chris Rumph II, the second. But yeah, Chris Rumph.
Very nice. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about in sort of the linebacking position?
Linebacker or edge rusher?
Well, either. Take your pick. I mean, we know you like to mix it up on this podcast, but I just don't think it's that good a draft for these players this year. Some years you get a very good defensive draft. Some years you get a very good offensive draft. This year it's definitely more offensive for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not massively sold. Players will go in the first round because teams have needs. It doesn't necessarily mean on an average year they'd be first round players.
Yeah, completely agree. I think you could see it would not be a shock if the top 10 picks are all offensive players. I think the team that could ruin that would be Denver at 9. I think if Micah Parsons there, the linebacker at Penn State, I think he's him and a couple of the cornerbacks. I think are the only kind of proper blue chip.
So what do you think about the defensive backfield players? Because we're hearing a lot about Certain.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to go in the first round.
Yep.
I think he's extremely accomplished. Same as Caleb Farley. They're accomplished college players who should progress very quickly in an NFL scheme. It's a very difficult position to play, a bit like tight end on offense. The cornerback position is quite often a letdown in their first year, but these two, for me, would fit into most systems and pick it up very quickly. They're intelligent players. They have the athleticism to basically track most of the receivers already in the league. So, but beyond those two, I mean,
I really like JC Horn. Like, I think you're being a bit down on JC Horn. He's one of those. He's one of those cornerbacks. You know, he's long. He's 6'1", 205 pounds. That's a solid cornerback. He's, you know, him to the Cardinals, I think, is a pretty good shout.
Is he the guy that's being criticised for like tracking everybody but not being able to put a tackle in? Is that him?
Yeah, he's good.
This is why I was a bit down on him. Is he not the guy that keeps up with everybody and then just doesn't manage to tackle them? I'm going to say that's him.
His man coverage skills are very good, but yeah, he can get either a bit grabby or just kind of let them go, which is either a penalty or a touchdown. You know, I think you're right in terms of like without the injury history to Caleb Farley, he's just kind of come back from back surgery, which apparently is all fine, but it's always going to be a cause of concern. I think Caleb Farley and Certain are like two of those blue chip players. I really think JC Horn will go quite early, and I think Greg Newsome's second will creep into the first round as well, potentially at Buffalo, maybe somewhere like Green Bay.
Fair enough. John, any names?
And on day 5 or 6, look out for Rashad Wilgush Jr. or Diomador Lenoir.
This might be why we're not GMs in the NFL. But
I think you missed out Rashad Wild Goose Jr.
I did, but mainly because I was looking at Tough Borland, the linebacker.
Names you want to see. Don't forget, guys, you can be turning these cards in next week on the show.
I know.
You can pick any of these players you like, and we can listen to John trying to pronounce them all day long. Okay, anybody that we haven't covered that you feel really deserves a mention in the draft before we move on?
There is one safety, and it's Trayvon Moehrig out of TCU. He's probably guaranteed first round. Head and shoulders the best safety in the class.
And can we also mention safety Divine Diablo?
What an amazing name that is.
Yeah. And Richard McCount, the third.
I mean, we didn't mention that at linebacker, Jeremiah Wusu-Koromoa.
I mean, there's a Dwayne Johnson at corner at safety.
I feel we've been sidetracked by the name game slightly, but
yeah,
you know, why not? Right. 3 years for me is enough time to judge a player and what trajectory their career is taking. So with that in mind, we're going to look back at the 2018 draft, first couple of rounds, maybe, certainly the first round, and just give a yay or a nay to the players from the first round. Let's see how they're doing. Give me your thoughts as we go along. I'll take us through. So the first overall pick, if you remember, was the Cleveland Browns, who had been historically bad for a very long time.
This was their second number one pick in a row, wasn't it?
Yes.
Myles Garrett before that. Now they have the number one pick again, thanks to Hugh Jackson.
Yeah. So the best thing Hugh ever did for the Browns. They surprised a few people on the day and took Baker Mayfield, who went on to have one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time, followed by a not so good second season, and then leading the team into the playoffs in his third year. For me, I think he's justified this pick. He may not be the best of the quarterbacks, but he's given the Browns something that they can build around and focus upon. And I think he's ticked all the boxes in what had been a terrible franchise.
I mean, for Baker, I mean, what we've mentioned, you know, about the potential pitfalls for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Baker's on his, fourth head coach? And he has been... Last season, he really, you know, we kept saying it was a make or break year. He's made it. I think he's no longer the weak link in a Cleveland team. I mean, whether you're saying that's whether he's true value for a number one pick, I don't know, but I think he's justified his pick really. as a first rounder at least.
Yeah, you can't disagree. He did a good job last year. You're right. We said it was make or break. He had the offensive line, he had good weapons around him, got his team into playoffs and won a playoff game as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
It did everything that was asked of him. And as much as he's one of these players you can love to hate, you couldn't fault what he's done so far. So if Trevor Lawrence has a similar 3-year start to his career, we'd say that's pretty damn good, I think.
I think with all the hype around Trevor Lawrence, I think he needs if he had the same pattern as Baker Mayfield, I think that would be a disappointment. I don't think there's as much hype.
Look at the franchise. Look at the Jaguars. What a state that team is. Right, John, what do we think about Saquon? Is it too early to say he's never going to lead you to the promised land because he's always injured? Or is that fair already?
I think this is the year we'll know, because
So no then.
Effectively, with Gettleman, what Gettleman likes, big players. He wants a team of, basically he wants a very old-fashioned style football team, which is, we'll see. But I mean, Saquon is a talent. Unfortunately, he plays for the Giants. That is what it is. If he gets injured because he's our only, at some points he is our only decent player, and we just keep giving the ball, and it's unfortunate. But he's a talent. Hopefully this
he's
year,
a top 5 running back in the league for 5 games a season.
Yeah, and that's it. If we can keep him fit, then I don't think it's always on Saquon. I don't think we've protected him enough.
No, of course you haven't. But that will continue this season. So not expecting much out of him. Number 3 overall, the Jets took Sam Darnold. Now, we know Darnold's just been traded to the Panthers and has done nothing but fail with the Jets. This is, for me, one of the hardest ones from the first round. He's been terrible. He is a bust at the moment. But I don't think that's how his career finishes.
No.
A bit like we were saying about Alex Smith earlier. His first 3, 4, 5 years were terrible. And then he's been a good enough quarterback. And I think Darnold will at least be the same.
He's still incredibly young. He's still only 23. He's younger than Joe Burrow. He's now got 3 years experience under his belt. He needed a new start. Even with the new coaching team coming into the Jets building, I think it makes sense for them to restart, and I think it makes sense for him to get another opportunity, because there is talent there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You think back to 2018, most people had Sam Darnold as their number 1 quarterback, and it was a shock that the Browns took Mayfield over Darnold. So there is obvious talent there. I think this is definitely probably his best chance. I think he's got good wide receivers around him. I think he's got a good coach, and he's got a great offensive coordinator who, to be fair, could be gone this time next year as a head coach gig. So it's a bit of a risk. Yeah, but at the same time, this is a good opportunity for Darnold. I think he's landed in probably as good a place as he could hope to. So I think the jury's still out on him, but it's probably swaying a little bit towards kind of bust.
Certainly, so it's not swaying. It's heavily falling towards bust at the moment.
It's not like, but yeah, it is swinging towards bust. But every so often he have a good game, and you think, where does this come from? And it's a surprise, but there's a player there. Let's get it out of it. It's got to happen. But it's just The
next 4 players up, I'm going to do as a group. They're all Pro Bowlers. They've all been excellent for their teams and have proved good picks by the general managers. So that's Denzel Ward, cornerback at the Browns, Bradley Chubb, linebacker for the Broncos, Quentin Nelson, who might be the best player of the lot, O-lineman for the Colts, and then Josh Allen, quarterback for the Bills, who has been as transformational for that team as Baker has been for the Browns. These 4 are all certainties to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Good. I mean, that is what I like to hear. Consensus on the podcast.
Yeah, I look at that, and Quentin Nelson was probably my favourite player in this draft. His college tape was brilliant, and he's carried that on at the Colts. he's the player who I look at that and like, right, if the Colts were to win a Super Bowl with him there, I think you're looking at Hall of Fame talented player.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's fair. Equally for me, and Josh Allen was my favourite quarterback in this draft. He's just doing things that the Bills aren't used to. It's wonderful to see a player be transformational at his franchise.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Josh Allen fan. My love for him gets stronger every year. So yeah,
I bet it does.
What a player! What a player!
Number 8, the Bears took Roquan Smith. I can never pronounce that properly.
Roquan
Smith, who I think has been a good player, but has plenty of room to get better.
Yeah,
I think this last year's been really he's been better in a slightly worse Bears defense.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I think he's good, but yeah, I think he's got more to grow. He's a talent.
One for Jim then, 9th overall, Mike McGlinchey at the Niners. Passable?
Yeah. Passable, I think, is probably the best word for it. He's had good points, and he's had mediocre points. He's not had the best of the season last year. I think he benefited massively from having Joe Staley there. I think he'll benefit again massively from having Trent Williams there over a long period of time.
Yeah,
I think it is questionable whether they give him another contract or not. I think just there's other players we've drafted in this draft who I think who will take priority, and I'm thinking kind of Fred Warner. So yeah, it's the jury's out, but it's like it's a solid starter. He's a solid starter. Okay. So I think that's what you want from the first round.
Do you want a passable offensive tackle?
You do.
Yeah, he's a very Giants-esque type player.
I think we can reach unanimous verdict on the 10th pick, Josh Rosen, quarterback to the Cardinals. This is an epic nosedive of a career. He's been on 3 different teams. He's thrown
four different teams. He's Cardinals.
Dolphins.
Then he's gone to Dolphins. He was at the Buccaneers and the practice squad, and now he's at the 49ers.
Well, I apologise. He's been on 4 different teams. He's thrown, 100 passes. He's not been good. And more to the point, he's not showing enough to these teams to be given more opportunities. I don't know how you fall off the cliff this quickly, but this is an absolute first-round bust.
Oh, yeah. The only saving grace that the Cardinals have on this is that they made the decision quickly, and they brought in another quarterback who is 20 times better than Josh Rosen.
Yeah,
so I think they get away with it a little bit.
They do, but Josh Rosen doesn't. No. And I don't know. I just don't know how, because he was being talked as the number 1 pick at one point.
Yeah, he was very
the
much
most pro-ready.
Pro-ready quarterback in the class, and it turns out his attitude stinks.
Right,
what we can
attitude
tell.
Stinks, but also remember that Cardinals that year, that team was
that offensive line also stunk.
It was bad.
What
it didn't help him.
Steve, can't remember the guy's name that ran the team. Wilkes.
Steve Kime's the general manager.
Oh, okay. Who was it? Not Wilkes, the coach?
I can't remember.
I can't believe
that's how memorable it is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm having a meltdown on here. So sorry. Number 11, Minkah Fitzpatrick to the Dolphins. We all know about Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Hey, good player, good pick, but he's now at the Steelers and doing very well there.
Yeah, it's an odd thing, but okay, it's worked out well for everybody. They've got some picks. The Steelers have got a great player. Vita Vea, I'm surprised hasn't been to the Pro Bowl.
As well.
He's basically Ndamukong Suh light for me. He's now a Super Bowl winner, and he's a real character on that team. They love him. So I think that's been a good pick. I don't have a problem there. Daron Payne for, at the time, the Redskins, but football team. What do we think? Again, like McGlinchey, serviceable, good enough.
Yeah, I think he's
without being outstanding.
I think round 1 you're looking for good starters. Right, and you'll get lucky that someone will be a Pro Bowl. And I think he's a good starter in Washington. Yeah, and that's a good defensive line, and he's one of the key pieces there.
Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes.
Yeah, Steve Wilkes, see? Useless. Number 14, the Saints took Marcus Davenport, defensive end. Yeah.
Bust because they gave up 2 first-round picks for him because they traded up.
It's just not happening for him.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of talent, but it just doesn't seem to translate on a weekly basis.
That was the thing of him coming in the draft. He was very young and he had a lot of talent. And I think that's what enamored the Saints to him.
Yeah.
And I think it was a surprise they traded up for him at the time that much. 2 first-round picks to go to that position. And he's not been great.
No, the same can be said of Colton Miller. So the next pick for the Raiders. If the other O-linemen, that we've discussed so far have been good and serviceable, Colton Miller's been disappointing.
Yeah.
Just
got a $55 million contract this month. But I don't get it.
I kind of think anything the Raiders and the front office do, you kind of have to look at it and go, okay, it's the Raiders. Fine.
It's a sideways glance. Out of the O-lineman in this first round, he's by far the most disappointing. It's not even close. So maybe they see more potential, and there probably should be. But at the moment, if you're picking bust or great, it's bust.
Closer to bust, definitely.
Yeah, certainly. Tremaine Edwards at the Bills, he's been great.
This still pains me. I think he was, again, one of my favourite players in this draft.
Yeah.
Really wanted the 49ers to take him. And he's another one. He was like 19 when he was drafted, so he's still incredibly young, and he's a great player for Buffalo. And
then, again, I'll do a block. Derwin James, Jair Alexander, Leighton Van Der Esch, and Frank Ragnar, if you like. These are all Pro Bowlers in a row. Yep. Now, there's been some injuries amongst this group. Derwin James, Leighton Van Der Esch, both have suffered season-ending injuries, but all 4 of them, you can't knock the Pro Bowl nominations and the impact they have for the teams when they're on the field.
Yeah, when they play, they make their teams better.
Yeah.
It's a shame we haven't seen Derwin James play for, 18 months now. Effectively. Yeah. He's only played 21 games in his career.
But the fact that we know after 21 games this guy's a really great player says everything you need to know. 21st overall, Billy Price, centre for the Bengals. See, I don't think he was ever a first rounder.
No, I don't think it was.
No.
So I think it's hard to judge the player, but that's what you have to do.
It's the Bengals. The Bengals spend the least out of the whole NFL on scouting. They have one of the most archaic scouting departments in the league.
Yeah.
So you kind of always have to look at the Bengals pick. I mean, picking Joe Burrow number 1 last year, obviously. But everything else, you look at the Bengals, and I think, I've said, again, first round, probably 50% success rate. When you look at the Bengals, you're probably looking at like 20% success rate.
If that. I would say he falls into the category of players who can improve, but...
Probably picked too early.
Yeah.
So I think the next one is as well.
Yeah, Rashaan Evans, round too early, done okay, but you're not a first rounder. Isaiah Wynn at the Patriots is an odd one for me. I think he has actually been really good, but he just hasn't played enough.
Yeah, he was injured for the first year, wasn't he?
He missed a whole year, the debut season. But actually, he's a good player. Just needs to play. So I would say he is a first rounder, and maybe out of all of the O-linemen in this first round, he may in the end turn out to be almost as good as Quentin Nelson. He could be the next best out of them in this first round. But
I'm going to disagree with that because Quentin Nelson's a man mountain of a person.
Yeah,
Isaiah Wynn's good.
Nobody's going to be better.
Versatile Isaiah Wynn.
DJ Moore, 24th overall to the Panthers, not a first round pick.
Oh, I disagree.
I like DJ Moore.
I like DJ Moore. I also think it's a bit of a surprise he went that high, but I think he's earned that, and I think he's the number 1 receiver in Carolina.
Yeah, but if you're ranking number 1 receivers, he's like 27th out of 32.
I think that's harsh.
I don't. I'm not sold on this one, but if you guys think he's done all right, then that's what counts. That's fine. Hayden Hurst, again, I don't think he was...
Well, he's since been traded, hasn't he? He's now in Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, it hasn't worked out. He's got a lot of talent, but it doesn't translate.
I also kind of think if you have been traded by your original team, then that's never a good sign, is it?
Probably
traded
not.
for a 4th round pick as well, wasn't it? So,
it just didn't translate. But they did also have Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And he burst onto the scene and took the light away from Hayden Hurst. Calvin Ridley, we're getting towards the end of the round now. Calvin Ridley, for me, is a far better receiver than DJ Moore.
Yeah.
And makes the Moore pick look unnecessary.
I would agree with better receiver. I'm going to disagree on far better receiver.
That's your
want. My opinion. I'm allowed it.
Yeah. So John mentioned him earlier. Rashad Penny, bust. It
was a shock. It was a shock when that pick was made, and it's still a shock now, and no one's surprised that it's a bust.
Terrell Edmonds, Steelers safety.
Solid.
Yeah.
Maybe not first round. Maybe could have got him a bit later. If I remember correctly, he wasn't predicted to be a first round pick.
Predicted to be like a day 2 player.
Yeah.
So they went early. He's okay. Tavon Bryan, defensive tackle at the Jags. Well, as soon as I said the word Jags, you should have known the answer. Definitely.
You're just so down on the Jags. I mean, this was the draft after they'd just gone to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, but it was a fluke. I said at the time it was a fluke, and it was a fluke. They had Blake Bortles at quarterback. Mike Hughes, cornerback for the Vikings.
I'm going to go bust.
Yeah, and I am as well. It's not worked out.
He's not been fit.
No.
When he is fit, he's been beaten.
He gives up big chunk plays.
Yeah.
It's just he's not ticking any of the cornerback boxes, and he doesn't seem to be improving. Year one for cornerbacks is hard, but he's making it look hard every year. So that's difficult. And then Sonny Michel, for me, disappointing.
I'm going to say bust.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at the same list as I am, you look at the next running back to go, which is Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I would take anyone would take Nick Chubb over Sonny Michel.
I think Sonny Michel had underlying knee issues that maybe weren't picked up or were covered up or ignored.
They were definitely talked about at the time, and I think it was another slight surprise that he'd gone in the first round. I'm not sure he's even at the Patriots at the start of this coming season. I wouldn't be shocked if he's cut.
Is it Harris, the other running back they picked last year? I think he looked like a far better and explosive player, to be honest. And then finally, the Ravens got back into the first round 2018 and drafted Lamar Jackson and transformed their franchise overnight. He might be
the best pick of the whole draft.
It might be the best pick in the 2018 draft. I know people question the passing ability, but he doesn't have to. So I'm happy to sit back and watch Lamar Jackson any day. I think this is a great pick.
Oh, it's a great pick. He's a great player.
Can't believe they took Hayden Hurst over Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I know. Just flicking quickly through the second round, like you say, Nick Chubb, 35th overall. Darius Leonard, 36th overall. Brilliant players.
Colts had a good draft.
Yeah. Cortland Sutton went in the second round. I think he's vastly underrated. I think he's a really good player. Mike Gesicki, I think, is coming into his own now, tight end at the Dolphins. Ronald Jones, though, Tampa Bay's second round running back, he was better last year, but
if he didn't have last year to be on, we'd be saying bust.
Bust, massive bust, absolutely.
I mean, there's
Dante Pettis. What do you think about Dante Pettis?
That's an obvious bust.
Absolutely.
I quite liked him at the time, but he's not gone to do anything, and he can't stay fit.
Dallas Goedert doesn't get enough credit for me. 49th overall. I think he's been a really good, solid player for the Eagles.
Could you mention Darius Geis?
Darius Geis, that's a running back bust if there ever was one.
James Washington there, Steelers.
The other running back they took at this time, Love? Was it Love?
That's later on.
Oh, okay.
DJ Shark, I know we laugh at him, but I still think he's a quality player.
Yep. Agreed. Quality player. And then I'll touch on it because he's come up on my screen. Fred Warner, third round, 70th overall. Great pickup that far down the draft for me.
Brilliant. Hang on, a couple more I'm going to mention because they did go to the Pro Bowl. Orlando Brown, the Baltimore Ravens tackle, he dropped like a stone because he had a really bad combine and not much better pro day. He's slated a potential first round pick and then just absolutely fell off the cliff. Mark Andrews was the second tight end picked by the Ravens, another Pro Bowl. And just flicking through the list, no one that really sticks out. I think that's about it.
Yeah, that was a bad couple of years drafting running backs for the football team. They had Darius Geis and then Bryce Love the following year, who was drafted with a cruciate ligament injury.
Especially when you consider that the Broncos this is the year Broncos got Lindsay undrafted, and he got to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Equanimous St. Brown was drafted in the 6th round by Green Bay.
Good work.
Just like that name.
It's a great name. So a snapshot of what could be. 3 years is long enough to make decent, informed judgments. Let's just bear this in mind. 3 years from now, we could be looking at Trevor Lawrence and saying, oh, he needs to move like Sam Darnold. Or we could be looking at him and saying he's pulled an Andrew Luck and dug this team from a 1-15 season to the Super Bowl contention.
Well, I think that the quarterbacks is why this is a good year to compare, because there's 5 quarterbacks in the first round here, and you've got 3 who are starters. And I think this is something we always forget when we talk about the draft, is that 5 quarterbacks going, and we always think that, they're going to, every single one of those is going to turn the franchise around. Well, that's not going to happen.
Three of these 5 will be disappointing.
Yes. As harsh as that sounds. It's like,
which 3? If you take out Trevor Lawrence, if you're prepared to say Trevor Lawrence is that good that he will definitely work out, that only leaves you one other that's going to be any good.
Well, I'd say 2 will be good, 1 will be average, 2 will be busts. I think that's probably fair.
Okay. Now name them.
No.
Let's see what happens, because we can't name them because Darnold looked a blue chipper. That's just it. But he joined the Jets.
Yeah,
we need to see them who they join first.
It's all down to where they land and the environment in which they land. Yeah, there are a few that what's the word I'm looking for?
Transcend
that. Thank you. And I think Trevor Lawrence could be one of them. We don't. Everyone mocks it, but we talk about generational talent, and you look at any kind of write-up of Trevor Lawrence, and they talk about him. He's the next Andrew Luck. He's the next Peyton Manning. He's the next John Elway. That's who he is. So it would be a huge, huge, huge shock if he doesn't turn out to be at least a solid starter.
Agreed. Right. That brings us to the conclusion of the podcast. This time next week, we'll be concluding our own draft, the Snap UK podcast draft. I hope everybody's getting ready. I've seen some trade discussion flash up on my phone while we've been having this. Yeah, a little bit.
I've just had a spike of information, inspiration for basically a shit team of mine.
But your brother apparently wants to charge you your very living soul.
He does.
I'm not sure you can trade away deities and mythical things, and I don't think that can be done. But whatever.
I'm going to offer him the innocence of a young child.
I need to go back and look who's got who. Who's got the Falcons?
Well,
scrolling back on our WhatsApp group.
I may be giving you a hint here, but it's Paul.
All right.
Yeah, Paul seems to hold a lot of cards with their Falcons pick at number 4. Anyway,
and the Panthers.
That is next week's problem to tackle. So it's time for us to sign off. Thank you very much for listening to the Snap UK podcast. And we will be back next week with hopefully a full complement of GMs for us to play with.
Bye. This is going to be a bit bad.
Bye.
Bye.